Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
The Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing. He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
It's like a Sharknado, except with poop.
Everybody, welcome to the show. It's Tuesday. I'm back. Long weekend. Nice to see you. By the way, I just want to tell everybody how much I appreciate the birthday wishes from yesterday. Thank you so much. And I'm even seeing some more today. So again, thank you very much. Really, really appreciate it. I had a good day yesterday. No rest for the wicked, of course. Just doing more, work. Housework, organizational stuff, and all that. So my day wasn't necessarily exciting, but I did eat some German chocolate cake, so that was good. That was my day. Yeah, nice little dinner. And had a little cake. Speaking of German, I hear the German elections did not go so well. Apologize. That sucks. I know I have some German folks in the audience that are telling me how not good it was. Well, if you think that's bad, you had to have been paying attention to our elections, right? I'm just saying. Nonetheless, that sucks. I'm sorry. I hope you find some sort of, I guess, decent coalition government that is formed. And again, to be honest, I don't know a ton about German elections. There's always a lot of, nuance and stuff when it comes to our elections here. Probably more so in the German elections. At least our fascists lost about a sixth of their votes. Well, that's good. Anytime fascists lose, that's at least that's something to celebrate. That said, real bad, quite bad. Berlin also gets a BS new mayor. That sucks. As I said, the only decent option we have is the Traffic Light Coalition. I know they have different names for the coalitions and things, but again, I'm not entirely familiar. But so apparently my internet's going to act up today. Fun. Hopefully everything works more or less good. Refresh if you haven't already. Here we go. Refresh, everybody. Refresh. Having some issues. So yeah, I'm guessing this is probably not going to be the first time or the last time that we have internet issues, weirdly enough. So refresh if you haven't already, and tell everyone else to refresh. It's super, super weird, so refresh if that happens. Let's see. Oh, you look younger in 144p. Does it make my eyes, or does it make my eyes feel older? I don't know. I'm gonna have to, look into that a little bit. Working for now. I'll catch the clips if something goes horribly wrong. Yeah, and there's the thing too. If there's ever a problem with the stream itself, no worries. All the stuff, since I record locally, will go up later on in the clips anyway. So generally, yeah, you'll have to wait. And I know it's annoying because I know y'all like watching the live stream and everything. But if there ever is a problem, we always do have the clips that go up later in the day. So, just an FYI, just in case we ever have anything that happens. All right. Anyway, so we've got a show today. Dial-up Jeff looks like a teenager. Well, just keep it that way. Then I look a little younger. 38 now. Yeah, yikes. I know. Hey, we got some fun stories, and then we're gonna get into some serious stuff. So, we'll do that. But fun stuff, of course, involving Donald Trump and show tunes, as always. Lauren Boebert and COVID. So ridiculous COVID stuff from Republicans, ridiculous Republicans all around. And then we're, of course, going to get into the CIA plot to murder a journalist. Yeah. So that's fun. But not really. All right. Anyway, let's get into it. Like and share if you haven't already. Very important that you do so. And let's dive into this into the story, into the disaster. Oh, did I see that Trump's 2019 visit to Walter Reed was for a Roto-Rooter? I'm assuming you're saying Roto-Rooter. And he refused to give Pence power because of the anesthesia. Yeah, I read that. God, this guy's ridiculous. All right. Anyway. Former President Donald Trump's former press secretary, Stephanie Grisham, is continuing to spill the tea over her time during the White House. So the latest topic to come out from her book, and there's a lot of stuff. There's been an info dump today. There's been many
dumps.
And some of them are
big, massive dumps.
So we've got that. Talking about that. Thankfully, this will not be about actual dumps, because I know there's a related story. But no. This is actually about the president's constant temper tantrums and what was used to quell them. So now, in other accounts from former staffers, you may have heard some of these before throughout the years. They would talk about how he'd throw massive fits over negative or not positive enough news coverage. In fact, we know that he's Fox News president, addicted to cable TV, didn't actually care about his job whatsoever. And so he would get angry, he'd get very, very mad, and he'd yell, and he'd smash tables, apparently, allegedly, right? And so now some of it might have been for the cameras. Donald Trump's a showman, first and foremost. But it turns out, no, according to Grisham, most of it was actually real and scary. In fact, Trump biographer Timothy L. O'Brien told Politico once that the hissy fits are, quote, standard operating procedure for Trump, saying the bad temper is real. But he can feign outrage when needed, usually when he feels he's been embarrassed publicly, and then he wants to invite the world to share his pain. Yes. Oh, sharing that pain. Oh, please, everybody, feel bad for the most powerful man in the entire United States. Isn't that sad? Isn't that both sad and pathetic? Like, oh, please feel bad for me. Me, who's been rich his entire life, who's always had everything handed to me from daddy, even though I am such a great and horrible disappointment to my entire family and family name. Somehow, you, regular people, normal human beings who have to work your ass off, should feel sorry for me because somebody, God forbid, said something mean about me on cable TV. Oh, the humanity. Please feel sorry for me. Oh, it's so sad. It's so, oh God, it's pathetic. Now, in this case, Grisham backs that up in her book. Here's what she writes. When I began to see how his temper wasn't just for shock value or the cameras, I began to regret my decision to go to the West Wing. So just to point out how terrible Stephanie Grisham also is, by the way, this is somebody who was press secretary, didn't do any press conferences whatsoever, just completely just ducked out, avoided everything. Well, she said, or I'm sorry, not she said, but she apparently had no regrets up until that time. And by the way, that time, I mean like Donald Trump getting mad, of course, and then of course January 6th, she just actually decided to leave, but she had no regrets up until then. I mean, this is after being a part of the incredibly racist campaign Trump had ran to become president in the first place. The disgusting things that he said, the disgusting things that came out about him during the campaign, none of that fazed her whatsoever until then. Until, of course, it affected her. And, of course, not just her, but, as I mentioned before, numerous staffers throughout his term said the same thing. And so, of course, she's not a good person. And understand that what she's saying, look, is, I believe her, ostensibly true. That doesn't make her a good person. And you also have to remember that. You have to remember that this is a person who, yes, by the way, has stories to tell because she was the consummate insider. The insider of insiders. And that's going to be relevant later on in the story when I give you Trump's response. But it's just to show you who we're dealing with. And I think, because normally you would hear somebody who, you know, is this kind of person, who is a terrible person, say these types of things, and that's a reason to discount them, right? In this case, no, it's actually more of a reason to believe them. So, I'm just saying, like, I do believe her because it's not just coming from her, but it's also coming from other people who were in the administration who have similar stories. And so, by the way, she also wasn't fired. This is somebody who left because, oh, shit just got too real when January 6th happened. And so, as I said before, that was her line when it actually came to trying to overthrow the election. So, again, very important context, I think. So now, back to Trump. So the overarching theme here from this book is that Donald Trump can't handle embarrassment. Again, we already knew that, right? But he gets embarrassed. That's what happens. Gets embarrassed, flies into a rage, and usually it's a result of what he sees as unfair coverage, and that just means any coverage that does not kiss his ass. So now, unnamed staffers recounted to outlets like Politico and the Washington Post that they had to control the information that may infuriate him, a task made difficult by the fact that the leader of the free world gets bored and often likes to watch TV. So now we know what riles him up, but the new information from Grisham is about how they calmed him down. And this is what's really, really funny. At one point, Grisham writes in the book, Mr. Trump's handlers designated an unnamed White House official known as the Music Man to play him his favorite show tunes, including Memory from Cats. to pull him from the brink of rage, the Times reports. So, disclosure, I'm an uncultured person, so I've never seen Cats. Sorry. I just haven't. I've had absolutely no interest. Whatever. So I don't know what that song is. I don't know how that could possibly calm him down, but apparently, that's what worked. Oh, we're just... Music Man, Donald Trump, the baby is getting too mad because CNN said something bad about him. Please, show tunes, just play him something, please. Okay, and that's what happened. Show tunes. This, look, if anything, really kind of backs up the thing that we've been saying for quite some time, that he's a child, a baby, sad. It's that. So now who's the poor guy who ended up having to play the show tunes for him? Now, it turns out the aide was Grisham's ex-boyfriend, Max Miller. Max Miller apparently has his own history with anger problems. Very interesting. You know, there's something that's said about music soothes the savage beast or something like that. Well, apparently it didn't work in Max's case because Grisham and Miller had eventually broke up after he had allegedly pushed her up against a wall, slapped her in the face when she accused him of cheating. So there's personal drama here. Not going to go into that. Whatever. Now, what's interesting about that is that Miller is running for Congress in Ohio and has been endorsed by Donald Trump. Shocker. So, of course, hey, it's the Music Man. So he's going to be backed by Donald Trump, of course. And it was his job to distract the baby so that the baby didn't throw dinner everywhere or something. So a little bit more info on what it was like for Grisham. She also wrote that she was the target of Trump's sexual harassment while in the White House, and said that he once asked her if her boyfriend, the Music Man, was any good in bed. Now, that is something that I did not want to know, and now you had to know it. You're welcome. Disgusting. Now we can be disgusted together. Together. So let's get to the response. Trump spokesperson came out with this response. Of course, it's very Trumpian. Stephanie didn't have what it takes, and that was obvious from the beginning. She became very angry and bitter after a breakup, and as time went on, she was seldom relied upon or even thought about. We didn't even think about her. Yeah, I didn't even think about her. Coffee girl. Very bitter. She had big problems, and we felt that she should work out those problems for herself. Now, like everyone else, she gets paid by a radical left-leaning publisher to say bad and untrue things. What left-leaning publisher is he talking about? Politico is about as establishment as you can get. Washington Post, New York Times, same thing. It's all establishment legacy media, which is very hostile to the left, to progressives. I know. Anything that criticizes him lightly, or even, not even, you don't even have to criticize him, just comes out with things that he's actually said or was quoted about, or was quoted as saying, that's suddenly now left wing. Everything's radical left. They add, too bad sleazebag publishers continue to report this very boring garbage. We in the MAGA movement are totally used to it, and someday in the not too distant future, we will have our voice back and be treated fairly by the press. Now, once again, so what are you talking about, have your voice back? You mean getting back on Twitter, right? That's the ultimate thing. He wants back on Twitter so bad. So bad. Even though, what happened? There's all these conservative outlets, conservative social media. There's Gab. There's, what is it? Parler. I think they're back up. There's Frank Speech. You could go, sign up for that. What is it? Gitter? There's Gitter. There's all these different ones. But no. Donald Trump wants back on Twitter. That's what that's about. And of course, be treated fairly by the press. We're being treated so unfairly. You got billions of dollars in free media coverage, and you're going to complain about the press? All right, sure, gotcha. But here's the thing: is they're actually right when they say it's garbage? This whole story's garbage. It's the drums. But like, just because it's trash, don't mean it ain't true. Totally true. I do believe it. As I said before, this is the dirt. This is the dirt, and that entire administration was full of it. Just full of it. It was down in the muck. More so, I think, than any other administration. In the muck. And we're in the muck with them, apparently. But it's more confirmation, this story, that we were dealing with an unhinged man-child, which we knew. We knew. Calling her bitter and angry, Grisham, I mean, that's a strong case of projection. As I said before, she has got stories to tell. And yes, there is money to be made because there is a market here. And she gonna make a lot of money because guess what? There's a lot of people that want to know about this. It's the hot gossip. And while it is fun and pretty funny, and I enjoy it, you know, getting into the muck here, we shouldn't forget this is the same person whose ego and temper tantrums did put the country in peril. They fueled an insurrection attempt and deepened the divides in this country even further than they were previously with these, you know, ridiculous antics. And so, on a more serious note, I guess to end this, is that I think that there needs to be steps taken to prevent somebody like this, obviously got some issues, mental issues, from ever getting into office again. Now, what those would look like, I don't really know for sure. Unfortunately, I don't see anybody even attempting to figure out what that would even look like. And so, unfortunately, we're really not making any progress in preventing another Trump, or even Trump from running again and possibly winning. And so it feels like we've made absolutely no progress in that regard. Sorry to end on a downer there. Next story should be a little bit more. I hope. Jared Kushner and Ivanka Trump desperately tried to push themselves into polite high society. That is despite Kushner being a failson slumlord, and, of course, Ivanka being Trump's idiot daughter. By the way, she's not a very smart person. Every time she talks, she proves how not smart she is. Why she didn't talk very much. So now they didn't get very far, obviously, but that's not from a lack of trying. Now there's an excerpt here from a forthcoming book, I'll Take Your Questions Now, by Melania Trump's former chief of staff and former White House press secretary, Stephanie Grisham, that reveals that Trump's daughter and son-in-law had been trying to muscle their way into a royal meeting with Queen Elizabeth II during a presidential visit. So now hold on here. So why? That always comes back to my question with those two. Why? What makes them think that they should be in these meetings? You're just an advisor. Your advisors apparently not even on the payroll, and you bring nothing to the table. Why should you be involved in presidential visits at all? Why? Now, what business? Now, honestly, this has nothing to do with, it's a breach of protocol to try to get into that room. Oh, you're not cleared to see the Queen? And you're trying to get in anyway? Oh, that is very impolite. Oh, I must say, seriously. No, I don't really care. That's not really my issue. No, my problem with them has always been the fact that they have absolutely nothing to contribute. Nothing. They're just wastes of space. Nothing. So now, funny enough, they didn't get their chance, and that's good. They were actually shut out when they wouldn't fit into the helicopter. Oh, good. Oh, I mean, how sad. Oh, man. And they would have had they gotten the chance. But of course, the question is, why? Or I guess the other question is, why would they want to? Or maybe why wouldn't they want to? Now, according to Grisham, she thinks she found the answer. She said Jared and Ivanka thought they were the royal family of the United States. So how about hells to the no? So let me be clear. If you've watched this show for a while, you would know that I hate dynasties. I don't like dynasties. I don't like monarchies. I don't like oligarchies or polite society, cocktail circuits, any of that stuff. No, I'm not at all interested. No. Donald Trump, not a king. Presidents are not kings. Okay. Ivanka Trump sure ain't no princess. Funny enough, though, that was her nickname, apparently. Grisham wrote that the First Lady and the White House staff often would call Ivanka the princess and would regularly invoke my father. Oh, what does that sound like? Do you know who my father is? Like Meghan McCain? Oh, my father. And now Ivanka must have been watching too much View or The View, and oh yeah, that really works for Meghan. Oh, maybe it'll work for me. My father. Oh, my father's president. You know that? My father's president. Donald Trump. No, what's even better, and by the way, she would do this in work meetings. Ridiculous, right? But I think I like Kushner's nickname better. You know what they called him? The Slim Reaper. So that's what makes me feel, because you could say, oh no, she's the princess. Ivanka's the princess, and so we mean that very, very earnestly because she's very, very royal. She's a royalty. No, doesn't mean it that way. Because when you look at Kushner's nickname, Slim Reaper, nah. Oh, how much did the staff hate them? How much? Oh, they hated them so much. I mean, again, if you go to some of the earlier reports of how everybody would make fun, like all the staffers making fun of Jared, making fun of Ivanka, making fun of Trump behind the scenes, they were just despised. And it's hilarious. So they called him Slim Reaper for a reason. Apparently, he had a habit of inserting himself into other people's projects or business, making a mess because he's incompetent, and then leaving the people originally working on the project to take the blame for his mess-ups. I remember another article where they essentially pointed out how Jared Kushner is basically a young Donald Trump, but maybe dumber. If you can believe that. Because I think that Donald Trump, yes, has always been pretty dumb, but then there's some advanced mental illness in there somewhere. You take away the mental illness, they're still dumb. And that's Jared Kushner. Now, what sucks about this is that these projects were actually pretty important and mattered to people's lives. In fact, one of the projects that Kushner was involved in, based on other reports, is COVID. He actually led the government response to COVID-19. And as we've seen, it was an absolute horrible disaster that led to the loss of life. 688,000 people have died as of now from COVID-19. And early on in the pandemic, had the government actually had taken this seriously, we could have avoided tens of thousands, possibly even 100,000 deaths. And I'm not entirely sure the exact numbers on, if we had taken this seriously as a country, or if the federal government had and the states had, how many people we actually could have saved. But I don't doubt that it would have been a pretty significant number. But no, instead we had this guy. We had this guy in charge who basically treated COVID the way he treated his tenants in his slumlords, his slums, the Kushnervilles. Now, here's what Grisham wrote. Quote, I had shared with Mrs. Trump many times my opinion that if we lost re-election in 2020, it would be because of Jared. She didn't disagree with me. But by the end of the administration, Grisham says Kushner was Trump's real chief of staff, apparently because Mark Meadows would cry all the time. Yeah, no, that's another thing. That's another headline I read earlier. Didn't get to dive into it, but apparently there was some reason that Mark Meadows was constantly crying. So yeah, that's fun. That's an interesting piece of information. But Kushner would sit next to Pence and the newly named head of the White House Coronavirus Task Force, and then ran the first meeting about what Trump should say to the nation about the pandemic. Also, apparently dictated much of the president's first widely criticized television address about the pandemic, the one that announced travel restrictions before even alerting the federal agencies who would have to implement them. So, yeah. Terrible. So, I guess in hindsight, when you look at it, absolutely correct. I knew going into this election that COVID was going to be a major factor in determining who would win. By the time, the primaries were getting close to being over, or even before the primaries, when COVID was really starting to affect a lot of people, and Trump was showing how disastrous of a leader he was in the face of a real crisis. And that's something, of course, we had predicted before. I remember saying, God forbid, we have a real crisis. And guess what? We had a real crisis. And COVID-19. And they botched it. 100%. Completely. Bungled. It was a disaster. And it still is a disaster. And we're feeling the reverberations of the original, dare I say, fuck-ups of the administration who had to, first crack at dealing with this. And it wasn't good. I think without the pandemic, though, had COVID-19 not existed, or had it been neutralized by, for example, China early on, without spreading to other countries in the United States, then I believe Trump would have had a pretty good chance at winning. But Kushner gave such terrible advice to Trump because he was a moron. And Trump, of course, being literally too lazy to do research whatsoever on his own, any research. He's a one-pager kind of guy who only has attention for tweet-like statements with his name peppered in and all that stuff. He then listened to Kushner and blew a winnable election. Again, handling COVID like handling a tenant problem, which would be basically ignoring it. And then trying to sue his way into getting extra money. These people think that they're so smart. In reality, of course, we know that they're greedy and entitled and deserve absolutely nothing but scorn. Sad, baby. How to Be a Millionaire, Start with $1 Billion by Donald Trump. All right. Now we go into Lauren Boebert. Representative Lauren Boebert is not the smartest person in government. Oh, no, really now, you say. No, either she's incredibly dumb, or she thinks her voters are incredibly dumb, or maybe there's a mixture of the two, and I'm not sure which ratio is what. An example of this is when she made an analogy recently between COVID-19, which has killed almost 700,000 Americans, 688,000 to be precise, and a common headache. Here's what she tweeted. I woke up with a headache this morning. I took some Tylenol. Now, if everyone else could take some Tylenol too, so mine would start working, that would be great. And she used an office meme. Or I'm sorry, Office Space meme. So imagine typing that tweet out, hitting send, and thinking, got him, nailed it. Got what? What did you get? What did you get? I mean, headaches are not contagious. You know what's contagious? Viruses. Weird. Though, of course, to be fair, Boebert's stupidity is actually starting to give me a headache. So I guess you nailed it. Kind of. I guess that's what they mean by painfully stupid. It doesn't cause the person who's being stupid pain, but everybody around them. Lucky for me, a headache is far more treatable than a bad case of COVID-19. But I just wonder, what if there was a way to ensure the chances of getting COVID-19 were very, very small? Oh, right, there is one. Yeah, it turns out it's called getting a vaccine. But, vaccines tend to only really work best for a society if a large amount of people, if the majority of the population gets it. That way you can develop something called herd immunity when you have over 70 or maybe even 90% of the population that is inoculated, which obviously dampens and blunts the effect of the virus and reduces its spread. I know, weird, right? And does it all without killing massive amounts of people. So now, here's the thing. I may have just cracked this whole thing wide open when it comes to the right wing. So now conservatives like Boebert, they say, well, the vaccine doesn't work. You still get sick with COVID if you have the vaccine. So what's the point? What's the point? Well, as I've explained many times, the point is, yes, there can be breakthrough infections, of course. But when you get the vaccine, first of all, it's much more difficult to get COVID-19 once you've been vaccinated. But if it does happen, which again is called a breakthrough infection, the symptoms are milder. So you are way less likely to go to the hospital with a severe infection. This is why 99% of all hospitalizations are among the unvaxxed, because since they don't have the antibodies to fight it, they are hit much, much harder and have to go to the hospital. But if you are vaccinated and you get a breakthrough infection, again, you're generally not going to require hospitalization. That's why vaccines are effective. Both incredibly good reasons to get vaccinated, but apparently not good enough for Republicans like Lauren Boebert, who, by the way, going back to how I cracked this whole thing open, the fact that Republicans, they don't care about other people. And this is their argument, right? So here's what a lot of them think, right? You just put yourself into MAGA mind, right? Oh, no, okay, I'm going to tune in the MAGA mind, all right? Sounds a lot like Megamind. Okay. Trump, very good. Lib's bad. Okay. Science bad. Jesus, I'm covered in the blood of Jesus. Okay. If I get COVID, I got antibody. I got an immune system. I'm gonna be fine. Vaccines are bad. Okay. I don't really care. And if I get it, I don't really care if I give it to somebody else. I don't care if they give it to other people, give it to somebody else. Doesn't affect me. That's their problem. Not mine. Freedom. Me. Why should I do something that I don't want to do for your benefit? For your benefit, especially when I don't see any benefit for me once I actually get sick. So now, of course, that shatters if they actually do get sick. For the most part, usually they'll end up in the hospital going, oh God, why didn't I take the vaccine? Please do something. Just inject it right here. Just put it in my veins. Please. Oh God. And then at that case, at that point in time, it's too late. Usually too late. Now, of course, some have held on and said, oh, no, I don't want the vaccine. Give me the horsey paste. Knowing that it's very likely going to do more harm than good. So, but again, totally childish mindset, MAGA brain, total baby brain. Now, thanks to right-wing media, who's been pushing the ivermectin stuff, apparently they're huffing. I know there's a new thing every single day. First, it was like the fish tank cleaner, and then you got the and then you got the horse paste, and then you got the, which is weird because like if any of the stuff worked, why do they keep having to find new stuff? The newest thing that they were putting in like inhalers. Hydrogen? No, it couldn't be hydrogen peroxide. I read something earlier that couldn't have been what is it? Okay, hydrogen peroxide. I gotta look this up. They're doing something. They're doing something, and I have to double check. Oh dear God, it is. It's true. Hydrogen peroxide. They're huffing through inhalers. Dear God. What are you? Oh, honey, what are you doing? What is wrong with you? No, don't do that. I've also heard of the iodine. What are you doing? So, but this is a result of all of this stuff is a result of disinformation from right-wing sources, but there's a reason that the people believe it, and that's due to selfishness. Okay? And so let me give you an example of this. Okay? A recent Gallup poll found that unvaccinated Republicans were significantly less informed than the average American on vaccine efficacy, which Gallup analysts suggested could be tied to the media that they consume. So you're on conservative media, you watch Fox News, or you're on Newsmax, or you're getting your information from right-wing memes on Facebook, then you're less, obviously, less. You're literally dumber than someone who consumes news from other sources. So think about that for a second. You're dumber. Okay, let's put it a different way. You're more ignorant. You're more ignorant than someone who gets their news from other places. News. And I say news, quotation marks, because obviously what they're getting is not news. It's not actual information. What they're getting is opinion, for one, and there's nothing wrong with opinion, but if you try to disguise your opinion that is wrong as factual information, then you are doing a disservice. You're actually literally hurting people. And that's what's going on. Now, and the thing is, they believe this stuff because they have a choice of where they can consume their news. They're not locked in to getting their news from Fox, but they choose to continue to turn it on and continue to listen to Tucker Carlson, talk about Nicki Minaj's cousin's friend's balls. And they do this so that they don't have to admit that they should care about other people. They should care about other people, but they also don't want to admit that they don't care about other people. No, what are you talking about? I'm pro-life Republican. Except I don't care at all about a woman's body autonomy. Don't care at all. I'm pro-life, but I don't care if somebody comes down with COVID that I don't know. I don't really care about them because it doesn't affect me. It doesn't affect me at all. And so that's what it is. That's what they say. Also, and it's why they come up with conspiracies, because they want to feel special, right? Oh, it's not safe. This person said this and that. My cousin's friend's uncle's brother, they had swollen balls from the vaccine, so that just gives me an excuse not to take it. It's an only excuse to feel special and not have to have empathy for other people, which again is pretty ironic because right-wingers scream constantly about how we have to care about them and their feelings and their opinions. That's what MAGA was all about. It's white grievance. All this talk about the silent majority. Oh, real Americans. Yeah, real Americans are conservative. Yeah, more patriots. Yeah, cancel culture. Terrible. You're silencing us. No, it's all because we're hurting conservatives' feelings, their fifis, by just living our lives in the way that they don't approve of, without their religion dictating our lives, without their, supposed sense of morals dictating our lives, or, with any of that. And of course, there's all sorts of projection on this, where they say, oh no, it's the libs that want to control your life. Oh, look at all these rules. Oh, the mask mandates. And again, not knowing that this is temporary for public health, and that we've always had vaccine mandates, for example, and that the Biden vaccine mandates only apply to federal workers anyway, and companies over 100 employees. And that's in response to a massive crisis. And had we actually done something about it earlier, it wouldn't have gotten to this bad. But again, that's what this is all about. Ban critical race theory. Why? Because it hurts my feelings. Everything hurts my feelings. People are the most sensitive motherfuckers on the planet. And that's why they chose Donald Trump. That's why they continue to choose Donald Trump, because he represents them by having the thinnest skin of all. The people are saying the skin, very, very thin, tremendously thin, like a big, beautiful sheet of white paper, very, very thin. No, there's no reality into what Lauren Boebert said at all. It's just dumb. It's just so dumb. But that's not all. We got more dumb tweets, by the way, from Boebert. This is more recent. Here's what she said. Quote, government is not God. Okay, and I actually agree with that. Government is not God. What are you implying by that? Literally, no one believes that government is God. Actually, you know what? Scratch that. Some people do. Actually, there are conservatives that do believe that Donald Trump was literally made president by God. Like God fingered him from heaven. And, well, that sounded dirty. Donald Trump, you in office, my will. They believe that. They believe that. But but honestly, though, it's something conservatives have always done. Remember, conservatives, back in the Revolutionary War, for example, conservatives were the ones in the red coats, believing in the divine right of kings, okay? In conserving the status quo. That's what this says. Now, here's the thing. I don't believe in the status quo. I don't believe in the divine right of kings. We rightly corrected that by ending it in the Western world. But understand, this is what Boebert is doing here. Now, I'm sure if you've watched a tiny bit of conservative media, or even progressive media like ours, like mine, that does critique things that they say in conservative media, you might have seen them talk about how, oh, it's the radical left. We worship government. Oh, the radical left, they worship government. They've made government their God. Well, first of all, we're not weak sauce individuals that need to deify everything. And yet, you deify Ronald Reagan. He's a deity. You deify Donald Trump. Obviously, you've done that. Gone back and deified George Washington. You tried to claim MLK Jr. and deify him, but only, by the way, only as somebody who was, not radical at all, which if you know anything about Martin Luther King Jr., you know that he was absolutely radical. He was a democratic socialist. But that's what happens when you deify something, or attempt to deify something. You whitewash it. You take all the bad traits out. And you say, and by the way, bad is pretty subjective here. But they'll go and take anything that's inconvenient out of that person and say, well, look at that. We should aspire to that. Donald Trump. They do this all the time. So it's massive, Massive projection. And so here's the thing, though. Now, as far as, well, radical left, right, radical left. Do we believe that government has a role in solving big issues? Absolutely. Yeah, of course. Healthcare, education, climate issues, infrastructure. Yeah, we believe in all that. Why? Why? Well, because those things are issues. Those things are projects that are too big for local and state governments to take on. The whole point of a federal government or a central government is to solve problems that are too big for local and state governments to handle because they have resources. And not only that, but it provides a framework or a foundation for the states, especially when, of course, these states are dealing with each other. And so if we didn't have that, understand that we already tried something like that system early on in the country's foundation. There were the Articles of Confederation, okay? Basically, it gave the states a lot of autonomy. And what happened? And a very, very weak central government. What happened? It was an absolute disaster. They scrapped that. They scrapped that and then proposed the federal system that we have today with a strong federal government, but with states' rights. That's what happened. That's what they had to do. And so, again, if we didn't have a central government that had authority, every state would be its own little nation or, city-state, for example, and it would be an absolute disastrous mess. Worse now than I would imagine, and our system's not great to begin with. And that belief, by the way, is mainly because, again, the federal government has resources and reach that states and localities do not have. That's why we, the people, have decided to give them that authority. And what is given can also be taken away through the democratic process, through the electoral process, as well as other ways. But that is way different than Jesus or God or whatever, which, by the way, the God of the Bible, and I'm talking specifically Old Testament here, is a pretty bloody and destructive autocrat. So, there's that. But it doesn't even matter. Because at the end of the day, the Bible isn't even part of the Constitution. God is not government. The government isn't God. We're a secular country founded on the idea that you can believe in whatever religion you want. That's fine. And that the government is not going to force you to believe in something else. That there should be a separation between the two. It's a real simple concept. Super simple. And yet, they continue to try to shoehorn their religion into the government and ironically try to make the government into a representative of their God. So this is another example, and Lauren Boebert is also incredibly corrupt. So there's so much projection, there's so much hypocrisy here, and there's so little information, so little fact. And that has come, her, and Marjorie Taylor Greene have really come to represent the Republican Party as it really is. Okay. Spock pointed out that God is pretty insecure. True. What does God need with the starship? All right. I'm going to only have time for one more story, so I apologize. We're going to have to save the Assange story for tomorrow. That's all right, though. That's a big story. I don't really want to leave out any details because it is important to talk about. So let's dive into the Kristi Noem story, and we'll leave that one for tomorrow. All right. It appears the governor of South Dakota, Kristi Noem, was busted using her position in order to try to financially help her daughter. So now the Associated Press is reporting the pro-Trump governor summited a meeting with the head of the state's real estate appraiser certification program as her daughter was struggling to get a license through that same program. Now, why would you have a meeting? Oh, that's interesting. Now, Noem's daughter is Cassidy Peters. And she had first applied for that license in September of 2019. Now, a letter dated July 27, 2020 showed that the appraiser certification program had moved to deny her license. So why is that? Well, the agency said that this sometimes happens when somebody's work samples do not meet their standards or the right standards. So that would mean that very likely she either didn't know what she was doing or didn't pass any tests. And I'm not intensely familiar with that process, to be fair, but apparently there was something about her that just wasn't up to snuff. Okay, hey, look, understand that that does happen. Sometimes you'll get rejected the first time, but then you can come back later after you do some practice, or whatever, right? And you can come back and you can become certified and then start to work. Now understand that that's what should have happened. But it didn't. She didn't bootstrap it. She didn't work a little harder to get the license. Didn't apply a little elbow grease. No, apparently her mom arranged a meeting and basically bullied her to get the license. Bullied someone to get her that license. So now Noem had taken matters into her own hands and called the agency head, Sherry Brenn. Brenn's the district direct supervisor, as well as the state labor secretary, in for a meeting on July 27th of 2020 with her daughter present. So that right there, already experts will point out, whoa, that is a conflict of interest. There are some issues here. Okay, you got these people directly involved with the licensing program with your daughter who just happened to have her license rejected. Interesting. Now, the AP said that what was discussed at the meeting was not entirely clear, but that it involved conversations about how people would get certified, and that the fact that Noem's daughter did not have her license. Apparently, after this conversation, Peters, who was then 26, got her license 4 months later in November of 2020. Again, we don't know how. Was it a friendly conversation? Did they say, look, hey, I'm just wondering, what's with my daughter? Why didn't she get her license? What's going on? Is there anything we can do to expedite that process? Which, of course, would be very ethically wrong in this case. There would be some issues here. Now, what makes it even more fishy is, the fact that later on, Brenn had alleged that the state labor secretary, Marsha Holtman, had called her in a week after the meeting and demanded her retirement. Asked for her retirement, let's be fair. Hey, completely unrelated matter. You just had this meeting with the Governor Noem, and, you're getting old, you're 70 years old. Hey, why don't you just pack it in? You just pack it up. Get retirement. Now, Brenn's like, yeah, how about no, I'm going to stay. And filed a lawsuit, which was settled for $200,000 to withdraw her complaint, actually. So it didn't even get to that point where she would sue, but just the threat of the lawsuit was more than enough for them to say, okay. Here's $200,000. Shut your mouth. Right? Gee, I wonder why. They paid her. It's not entirely clear. I don't know what's going on here. Now, Brenn did leave her job on March 2021 after the state paid her $200,000, as I said before. So now I think this looks like textbook corruption. I think it's a swamp. I think calling people up for personal meetings to get your daughter something that she might not have met the criteria for, I think that's abuse of power. I think that's abuse of influence. That's a problem. That's it. Let me give you the response here. A spokesperson for Noem, Ian Fury, which, by the way, that name's awesome. I know it's a spokesperson for Kristi Noem, but Ian Fury. All right. So now, that person told Business Insider, quote, the Associated Press is disparaging the governor's daughter in order to attack the governor politically. No wonder Americans' trust in the media is at an all-time low. South Dakota is open for business. But what does that have to do with anything? South Dakota open for business? What are you talking about? That's super weird. They added, we won't allow bureaucratic red tape to get in the way of South Dakota's sustained economic growth. Having more quality appraisers in the market will help keep housing market moving and home prices down. Well, look, I'm not familiar with the South Dakota market, to be honest with you, but in general, I've only seen a rise in home prices. Now, again, that's hardly the fault of South Dakota. It might not even be, applicable in South Dakota. But we do have a problem in this country of giant companies snapping up homes with cash and making them into rentals. These are not mom and pop renters, these are gigantic corporations. Sometimes they're overseas, foreign corporations that will come up and buy up these homes, kind of like the Kushners, the Kushnervilles that I talked about earlier. Now, that does drive up home prices, and it does reduce supply. It also increases gentrification, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But, okay, so now if you're talking about, hey, we need appraisers, right? Okay, make sure they're licensed and trained properly. All I ask is that people don't cheat the system or use any influence to give their family an unfair advantage over other better people, other better candidates. Now, look, I even called out, for example, Hunter Biden being on the board of Burisma. I don't give a goddamn about Hunter Biden. I think half the crap that's thrown at him and Joe Biden is ridiculous. But hey, Hunter got on that board not because he was qualified about gas or natural gas. It's because he was a son of Joe Biden and they wanted to get influence. So understand that that does happen, that there are influence peddlers. There are people that are trying to get influence by hiring family members and doing things like that. Now, this is not quite that situation. This is somebody who's already in an established position going in and literally talking to this person saying, hey, why haven't you given my daughter a license yet? I find that very, very shady. You should just probably just give her one, and then, we wouldn't have any issues. We wouldn't have any issues here. So, and here's the other thing, right? There is no reason that I think Cassidy, and I don't even know, maybe she did, but Cassidy probably could have gotten certified on her own through applying herself and trying again and again and again. And maybe that is what happened. I don't know. But the sad fact is, because of this, she is forever tainted. No matter how good she is or may become at the job, it doesn't matter because now it looks like she got here through tainted means. And it could also mean that she could be out there doing a job that she's not, qualified to do, which could end up hurting people in the long term, hurting consumers. And so this is not a good situation for anyone involved. And I think a really good example of personal corruption. Now, Noem also responded to this. Here's what she said. Listen, I get it. I signed up for this job, but now the media is trying to destroy my children. She's almost 30. I think she can handle herself. She's what, 26, 27? Come on. The story is just another example of the double standard that exists with the media, going after conservatives and their kids while ignoring liberals. Hashtag ask the big guy. Who's the big guy? Who's the big guy? Also, I'm sorry, but did you miss the media ripping into Joe Biden? Especially about Afghanistan. They're vicious. Everybody was attacking him. And generally, I would normally attack Joe Biden, honestly, because he's not as progressive as I would like. But I attack him from the left. What the media does is they've been attacking him from the right when it comes to Afghanistan. And the reason, of course, is that mainstream media loves constant warfare. That said, if they're ignoring liberals, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure they would report on liberals doing the same thing. I think really the real thing, the real blind spot of mainstream media is that they just completely missed the corruption of money in politics. That is affecting both sides. They have a gigantic blind spot for corporate donations. For example, here's a good example of this. The Hill's Alexander Bolton wrote about Kyrsten Sinema and her opposition to the reconciliation bill. But he frames it as, and get this, right? Big mystery. Kyrsten Sinema, what an enigma. Can't figure it out. No, it's not a mystery, guys. She has 923,065 reasons to oppose the infrastructure bill, the reconciliation. That's how much she got from the industry groups to oppose reconciliation. The donors! It's the donors! So now, again, they write, though, back to Alexander Bolton. She's not afraid to march to the beat of her own drum. Here's the cinema. No, she follows the donors. That's what it's always about. Now, they also don't talk about how Joe Manchin literally makes double his salary from fossil fuels. They don't talk about how the pharmaceutical industry gives an almost equal amount to Democrats and Republicans so that we don't get anything like allowing Medicare, for example, to negotiate prescription drugs. Why all these corporate Democrats are coming out and saying, oh, well, I don't know about the cost of this reconciliation bill. No, it's not about the cost. It's about what it would actually do to corporate profits. That's what it's always about. So, no, spare me the bullshit, Kristi, okay? No, you got caught with your hand in the cookie jar trying to use your influence and your position of power in order to help your daughter and to help her financially. And by the way, again, gets her license, she'll be able to do this as a job. Yeah. Sad. So now, ethics experts, as I mentioned before, told the Associated Press that even though the contents of the meeting are not known, the fact that her daughter was present does show a conflict of interest. That said, Bren declined to give the AP more details about that meeting after speaking with her lawyers. Wonder why. I think maybe she wants to take the money and just stay silent. Or maybe she's afraid of being targeted by Kristi Noem. By the way, is very close to Donald Trump, very pro-Trump, and he has said some very nice things about her. So I'm pretty sure she doesn't want to get involved in that firestorm. Not entirely sure. That's just my guess. I don't know. But to me, this is definitely a conflict of interest. It's another example of the swamp, corruption. But unfortunately, like a lot of the corruption that happens in our government, I do not see this being investigated only or even punished. So that is a sad reality. Again, it comes down to abuse of power, corruption, and of course, money. There you go. All right. Tomorrow we're going to do the Assange murder plot, how, the CIA is a terrible organization. But I think you already knew that, and how they tried to murder journalists. Great. We'll talk about that. And of course, we'll have plenty more stories. But until then, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. It's important that you do so. Helps out the show greatly. So thank you, and I appreciate that. Let's see. Rosie Dragon, thank you for the follow. SillyMe310, thank you for the follow on Twitch. Much appreciated. Dive in here and look at the super chats real quick. Oh, let's see. I don't know if that was from today. It doesn't tell me. Torn Tokoroa says, someone clipped Chef realizing that, yes, they're huffing hydrogen peroxide. Come on, my dude, nothing is too crazy for them. This is bonkers. No, I read that today, but I wanted to make sure. I needed to fact check just to make sure because it could have been hydrogen something else. Like, I didn't go and read through that article. I just saw the headline and I was like, Jesus Christ. But no, hydrogen peroxide. And Craig McDonald, thank you for the very kind $10. Rum money. I don't drink, but thank you. I appreciate it anyway. And again, I really appreciate the happy birthday wishes as well. Thank you so much. Y'all are amazing, as always. And that said, we're going to head out. Thank you again for watching. Right, we'll be here tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern. Again, thank you, love you, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation. See y'all tomorrow.
Dumps. Big, massive dumps.
Who's got a hammer?
Please clap.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.